There are a ton of Pokemons with 3 stage lines, but they could just be 2 stages. So I want to talk about Pokemon lines that could just be 2 stage lines instead of 3 stage lines. This doesn't mean I dislike the Pokemon I remove, it just means that it would still make sense without it. And sometimes it might even be that the Pokemon is just kinda worthless. I think that the first clear options for this are the 2 stage lines that got a baby Pokemon. Like we have Clefairy, Pikachu, Jigglypuff, Azumarill, and all these lines have a baby Pokemon. But genuinely, we don't need those baby Pokemons. Like for example, Azurill. Why is Azurill normal fairy? What? Why? Why not water? And why did we need it? Listen, I love Pichu, but I would rather have Gorchu. So all of them could have just been 2 stage lines. Other Pokemons like Dynamo, Wishmer, Flabebe are other first stage Pokemon that don't need to be a part of the whole line. Like, I'm sorry, we don't need Dynamo, it doesn't really even match the whole line, and the same goes for Wishmer. They both feel kinda off. And again, I don't think they're bad Pokemons, I just feel like it doesn't really fit the line. And the Pokemons could have just been 2 stage lines, and it wouldn't have really changed anything. And then Flabebe as well, but I also think Floette could be removed. I don't feel that much the same for Floette, but it's either Flabebe or Floette. I would rather it be Flabebe. But they are so similar that we just don't need Flabebe. Floette and Florges would have been enough. And then we have a Pokemon that I think is really interesting, and that is Crocodile. Because technically we could have removed Crocodile. Sandile and Krokorok could have been enough. I love Crocodile, but it could have genuinely been a 2 stage line. It looks a lot like other 2 stage lines. But you know, Crocodile is too amazing and too cool to remove. But that doesn't make it any less possible that it could have been a 2 stage line without Crocodile. And then we have some obvious middle evolutions that are basically worthless. Like Vanillish. Do we really need that ice cream? It could have just been Vanillite and Vanillux. It would have definitely been enough. We also obviously have Pomo, because we don't need Pomo. Pomo looks the exact same as Palmy. They're basically the same Pokemon. It just takes up a spot in the Pokédex. We could have had a pre-evolution of like Dondozo instead. That's just a wasted design. But maybe it was to make sure that Goldengo was the 1000th Pokemon, and he wanted to make a very simple Pokemon. I wouldn't be surprised if that's the reason. But obviously Palmy and Palmod is enough. We'd also have Klinklang, or specifically Klang. But the thing about it is that it works with the name. Like you could not have Kling and then Klinklang, you know? Or like it could work, but it's way more fun that it's Kling, Klang and then Klinklang. But again, we really don't need Klang. It could have just been Kling and then Klinklang. We'd also have the Honedge line, where it doesn't really make sense that Doublade is a part of it. Listen, Doublade is super cool, but does it make sense? Not really. Honedge and Aegislash makes way more sense, because that means it would have just gained a shield. But here it gains another sword, and then just loses it? Bro, what happened with that sword? Did it also have like a soul in it? We do also have Pokemon like Tranquil. We all know we don't need Tranquil. And that is just obvious. I'm sorry if that's your favorite Pokemon. Another interesting one is actually the Scatterbug line. Because do we really need Spupa? Scatterbug and Vivillon look so similar, and it would have been so cool if it just gained wings. And that is what it looks like. Of course, Spupa is supposed to be some sort of cocoon type of thing. But I think it would have been way cooler if Scatterbug just evolved and gained wings. And was different from the other bugs that are a bit similar, like Butterfree and Beautifly. The Hoppip line is also a line that feels really weird because we don't need Skiploom. Like Skiploom is just kinda worthless, in my opinion at least. And Hoppip could have just evolved into Jumpluff. It works like any other Pokemon because they don't really have that many similarities at all, any of the 3. Could have just been like Remoraid and Octillery, because they currently kinda are like that, just that they are a 3-stage line. Another Pokemon we don't really need is Flaffy. Listen, I think Flaffy is cool, but Mareep could have just evolved into Ampharos. It wouldn't have really changed anything in my mind. It would have just been a bit similar to Golduck and Psyduck, as well as Skorupi and Drapion, and other lines that look like that. And then we have a pretty interesting one. No Kirlia at all. Because do we really need Kirlia when we look at them? Like both based on stats? Like Kirlia has so bad stats, they are so worthless. Also, it doesn't really add anything to the whole line. Like you could say it adds the legs, but it really doesn't. Because you can't really see Gardevoir's legs, as well as Gallade has white legs. And Ralts, also you can't see the legs, so that was basically kinda just worthless. And the skirt part that becomes longer doesn't either make sense, because it just stays the same when he turns into Gardevoir, and just becomes, I guess, a part of the legs and a part of the weird stomach thing that Gallade has anyway. And the same goes for the thing on top of the head. They just stop being on the head anyway, and then look the same in the evolutions as they do with Ralts, just that they're no longer on the head, they're on the chest instead. So it doesn't really add anything with Curlia. And the hair also is just really weird, because the hair gets longer. But then when it turns into Gardevoir, the hair gets shorter again. And Gallade is quite different anyway. I don't dislike Curlia in any way, but it just doesn't really add anything to the line. It could have just been a Pokemon like Magikarp, but instead of being like a fish, it's instead a humanoid Pokemon that is very tiny and weak and then turns into Gardevoir or Gallade, who are two beasts. And I think that's awesome. Two Pokemon lines that have a similar reason are Shinx and Lillipup. And that is that we don't need Luxio and Herdier, because both lines look like the type of Pokemon Meowth and Persian are, or Vulpix and Ninetales. And even newer Pokemons like Yamper and Boltund, and Mastiff and Mebostiff. Obviously Pokemon could be different, but again it doesn't really add that much to the entire line. And it's not really needed, even though I do like them. And I think they should stay. It just means that they could be two-stage lines. And then we actually have the final Pokemon I'm gonna talk about, and that is Axew. And I think this is a very interesting thing, because I think Axew and Haxorus could have just been a two-stage line without Fracture. And I love Fracture, it looks so cool, it's so awesome. But while I was looking for Pokemons, I saw that Axew and Haxorus were next to a Pokemon. A Pokemon that is a tiny Pokemon and then turns into a really big monstrous Pokemon. Cubchoo and Beartic. And man, that could have been so cool, having some sort of rivalry there. You would have had the little dragon and the little bear. And then when they evolve, they become these big beasts that are going to fight. And I think that could have been awesome. We even had a little bit of beef with that in the anime. I do also think it fits the whole vibe, like I said with the Ralts line, of being some sort of Gyarados Magikarp type of Pokemon. Which Cubchoo and Beartic kinda is. So even though I love Fracture, I would have also loved this, and I think that makes it possible for Axew and Haxorus to be a two-stage line. But that are all of the three-stage Pokemon lines that I think could be two stages. Like I said, this doesn't mean I hate any of the Pokemons. It mostly just means that it would make sense without the Pokemon that I mentioned. And let me know if you agree or disagree, and if you think that there is any other three-stage line that could be two stages. So write your opinion on all of that in the comments. But as always, like the video and subscribe, follow me on Twitch and join my Discord server, link in bio. We are also close to 250 subscribers here on YouTube, so I would be very thankful if you could help with that. Other than that, I have a video right here about why Pikachu and Eevee are not starter Pokemons. So go ahead and watch that. So I'll see you guys in the next one. Have a great rest of your night, day, morning, or wherever. Peace out and don't forget to follow.